like this, listen to our Stock Movers podcast. Subscribe for 5-minute episodes on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Listen to Stock Movers on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. All right, in studio, this is a treat. This must mean something.
I know, it's big. Something's happening. Somebody's buying somebody a free meal today. That's what I'm guessing.
That's what I'm thinking. Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst, joins us now. We have 100 days for President Trump. He's celebrating with a rally in Detroit and hitting the road. What does that signify to you?
Well, I think what we're thinking about is what's going to be the next bigger thing for the markets, because obviously we've talked a lot about tariffs, but just this morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was talking about deregulation. So what we're doing is we're telling our clients that's probably the next biggest prong for the next 100 days, because there was a lot of sentiment coming into the election about deregulation, but there's no magic wand. You can't just say, poof, deregulate.
There's no executive order for that?
Well, there are executive orders, but they're somewhat limited in what they can do. So you need to go through this rulemaking process, and you needed agency leaders to be put in place. Mm-hmm. Those agency leaders are now being confirmed by the Senate. And so in the next 100 days, we think the proposals, if you will, for a lot of the industries we cover, namely energy, technology, and financial services, these proposals are going to come out in the next 100 days. So he wasn't wrong when he said deregulation is coming.
So I was at an event last week in Oklahoma City, and the Interior Secretary said that they're going to change permitting days to 17 days. And actually maybe 14. Either way, that's nuts from multiple years. And if you include environmental permits, it'll just be a little over 20 days. And he said he can do that because President Trump declared a national energy emergency. Is it that simple?
It is for the energy sector. So out of the sectors that we cover, if you're in the energy space, you have to pay a little bit more attention to these executive orders like you were talking about, Paul. So when the Secretary of the Interior says they can cut these permitting times down, he can. But it doesn't work like that when it comes to financial services. So there's a lot of financial services investors who are like bank deregulation, think of cuts to capital requirements. That has to go through something called the Administrative Procedures Act. Long story short is it takes about a year.
All right, one of the other growth agendas I think that President Trump and his administration came into office supporting or proposing was just a continuation of the tax cuts, the 2017 tax cuts. Where are we with that whole legislation?
Yeah, so the House wants it wrapped up by Memorial Day. Speaker Johnson says he wants it done by Memorial Day. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said July 4th is the date that we're going to do it. We're telling our clients we think it's going to come before the August recess, but the deadline you need to pay attention to is the deadline of the debt ceiling. And whenever that X date is, Treasury says they're going to have a new X date later this week, early next week. Our chief rate strategist, Ira Jersey, has it around late July. That X date is the date that the reconciliation bill most likely will get done. Because if not, then they're going to have to do something else to raise the debt ceiling.
Do you feel that July 4th for passing a budget, et cetera, is that realistic?
I think it's feasible but difficult. So I think more likely than not, it's going to come in late July or before the August recess.
But was it one of those things where you do July 4th and you don't let anyone leave because everyone wants to go away for holiday celebrations, but they make them stay? Is that the idea?
Yeah, and I think even if they don't get it done by August, they'll keep them around and say, look, you're just going to have to be in the 100-degree heat.
I'm a big July 4th guy. That would be good incentive for me if I were a lawmaker.
Yeah.
So how are we paying for all this stuff? Because he's talking about more tax cuts, and it's in the trillions of dollars. And how do we pay for that?
Yeah, so there's really 4 pillars to this. The first one is you can increase the deficit. And this is what we think is the most likely outcome. The other 3 pillars are cutting Medicaid, SNAP benefits, the Inflation Reduction Act. And just because it's much easier to kick the can on the deficit and to vote for a deficit increase than it is to cut Medicaid or cut the food, the program formerly known as food stamps, we think that Congress, more likely than not, is going to say, let's take the deficit route and we'll just borrow today to spend for more later.
I mean, isn't that what we've been doing forever? So how is this one different?
Well, it's not, because Congress, at the end of the day, they think 1 to 2 year terms. They don't have to do with a 10-year treasury or anything like that. They think before the next election. And when Elon Musk comes in and says, look, I want to cut and get us back our fiscal house in order, majority of the payments that go out from the U.S. government are mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and you need Congress to deal with that. And it's the third rail politics, because if you vote to say that I'm going to cut Medicaid or if I'm going to cut Social Security, then more likely than not, you may be out of office come the next election.
That's politics.
Yeah.
All right. Nathan Dean, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Nathan Dean, Senior Policy Analyst, Bloomberg Intelligence. Nobody does it better. And he works with us. He's on our team, so that's cool.